My daughter's piano teacher switched to Arabic with someone. She just gave them our home security code. I was standing in my home office on a Friday afternoon in March when I heard Layla Mansour answer her phone during my daughter Sophia's lesson. The piano room was directly below my office, and the heating vent carried sound straight up through the floorboards. Layla had been teaching Sophia for 8 months, coming to our house every Friday at 4 o'clock. She was a conservatory graduate from Lebanon, mid-30s, with impeccable credentials and a waiting list of students. My wife Rachel had been thrilled when Layla agreed to take Sophia on, saying we were lucky to get a spot with someone so talented and professional. The phone conversation started in English, something about rescheduling another student. Then Layla switched to Arabic mid-sentence, her voice dropping slightly. I wouldn't have thought twice about it, except I'd spent 6 years working as a civilian contractor for the Defense Intelligence Agency in Iraq and Syria, doing logistics coordination for forward operating bases. I'd picked up conversational Arabic out of necessity, enough to understand what local workers were saying when they thought Americans couldn't follow. I'd never mentioned this to anyone in my current life as a software consultant in suburban Virginia. It was easier to leave that whole chapter behind after I got out. Layla's Arabic was rapid and quiet, but the acoustics of the old house carried her words clearly through the vent. She said, "I'm at the target location now. The code is 47928. Front door and garage both use the same one. He changes it on the first of every month like clockwork." My blood went cold. I stood frozen at my desk, phone in hand, trying to process what I'd just heard. Layla continued, "The father works from home Fridays. Mother works late at the hospital most nights. Best window is Saturday evening when they usually go out. The girl will be with the grandmother." I forced myself to breathe slowly and quietly, not wanting to alert anyone downstairs that I might be listening. Layla was speaking to someone about our security code, our schedules, our routines. She was gathering intelligence on my family. The casual way she referred to us as targets made my hands shake with rage and terror. She said a few more words I couldn't quite catch, then switched back to English and told Sophia to practice her scales while she took care of some administrative matters in the hallway. I heard the piano room door close. The voice on the other end had responded before she switched back to English. A male voice, also in Arabic, saying something that made my stomach drop even further. "Good. We'll have the team ready for Saturday. Make sure the grandmother's address is in the file. We need clean extraction with minimal noise. The client is paying premium for this one. Young, undamaged, musical talent. She's worth twice the usual rate." I realized this wasn't about robbing our house. They were planning to take my daughter. I needed to think clearly, despite the adrenaline flooding my system. If I confronted Layla now, I'd tip her off that I understood Arabic, and whoever she was working with would know their plan was compromised. If I let her leave normally, she'd assume everything was proceeding as planned, but my family would remain in immediate danger. I pulled out my phone and opened the security camera app. We'd installed cameras 6 months ago after a string of break-ins in the neighborhood, covering the front door, back door, driveway, and interior hallway near the bedrooms. I scrolled back through today's footage and found Layla arriving at 3:55 as usual. But this time, I noticed something I'd missed before. While Sophia was getting her sheet music from upstairs, Layla had walked through our first floor, glancing into rooms with what now looked like deliberate assessment rather than casual curiosity. She'd paused at the alarm panel by the front door, positioning herself at an angle where she could see the keypad clearly. I watched myself come downstairs and greet her, then punch in the code to deactivate the alarm before heading back up to my office. She'd been watching my fingers the entire time, memorizing the sequence. I scrolled back further through the archived footage, going back weeks. In every session, Layla had done something similar, positioned herself to observe, asked questions that seemed innocent but were actually intelligence gathering. 3 weeks ago, she'd asked Sophia about her favorite stuffed animal and which window in her bedroom faced the street. 2 months ago, she'd commented on the beautiful backyard and asked if we kept the rear gate locked. Every interaction had been a reconnaissance mission disguised as friendly conversation with a child. I thought back over the past 8 months, remembering how Layla had always been friendly and interested in our lives. She'd asked about Rachel's nursing schedule at the hospital, about Sophia's school calendar, about my work-from-home routine. At the time, it had seemed like normal small talk, the kind of personal interest that made her a good teacher who cared about her students' lives outside of lessons. Now, every question took on a sinister significance. She'd been building a dossier on us systematically, identifying the optimal time to strike. My phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. "Working late again, probably home by 10. Can you handle Sophia's dinner?" I stared at the message, my mind racing. Rachel didn't know that her predictable schedule had been logged and analyzed by someone planning to kidnap our daughter. I typed back a normal response while my hands trembled. Then I heard the piano music resume downstairs, Sophia playing her scales, trusting and innocent, with a predator sitting 3 feet away from her. I needed to know more about Layla Mansour before I decided how to handle this. I opened my laptop and started searching, beginning with the basic information Rachel had collected when we'd hired her. The conservatory credentials checked out. She'd graduated with honors from the Lebanese National Higher Conservatory of Music 8 years ago. But when I dug deeper into her background, inconsistencies appeared. Her LinkedIn profile showed a gap of 3 years between graduation and her arrival in the United States. The references Rachel had called were all from students she'd acquired after coming to Virginia, none from her time in Lebanon. I found her faculty profile on the conservatory website, complete with graduation photo. But when I ran a reverse image search, I found the same photo associated with a memorial page from 6 years ago. The original Layla Mansour had died in a car accident in Beirut. Someone else was using her identity, someone who'd stolen the credentials of a dead woman to build a false life. The person teaching my daughter piano was a ghost wearing someone else's face. I called an old colleague from my DIA days, a guy named Anthony Reeves, who now worked in private security and still had access to databases most civilians never knew existed. He answered on the second ring, and I explained the situation in quick, quiet sentences. Anthony said he'd run Layla's information through his systems and call me back within an hour. I sat at my desk, listening to piano scales drift up from below, each note precise and controlled, played by my 7-year-old daughter, who had no idea her teacher was planning something that required our security code and detailed knowledge of our schedules. The lesson ended at 5 as usual. I heard Layla and Sophia saying goodbye, then the front door closing. I watched through the camera feed as Layla walked to her car, a silver Nissan Altima, and sat behind the wheel for a moment before pulling out her phone. She made another call, speaking in Arabic again. This time I couldn't hear the words through the camera's audio, but I could see her expression, cold, calculating, completely different from the warm smile she'd worn with Sophia moments before. She drove away, and I immediately went downstairs to check on my daughter. Sophia was putting her sheet music away in the piano bench, humming the melody she'd been practicing. I asked her if everything had gone well with her lesson, trying to keep my voice casual despite the rage and fear churning in my gut. She said Layla had been really nice today, and had complimented her progress on the Chopin piece they'd been working on. Then she mentioned something that made my stomach drop even further. Layla had asked her about the sleepover at Grandma's house tomorrow night, asking specific questions about what time we'd be dropping her off and when we'd be picking her up Sunday morning. My daughter had told her everything. We were planning to see a movie downtown, just Mom and Dad, dropping Sophia at Rachel's mother's house at 5:30. We'd pick her up around 11 on Sunday after brunch. Layla had smiled and said that sounded wonderful, that Sophia was so lucky to have such a close relationship with her grandmother, more intelligence gathering, done so smoothly that a 7-year-old had no idea she was being interrogated. Sophia had given them the exact window they needed, a full 18 hours when she'd be separated from her parents. Anthony called back at 5:45. His voice was tense when I answered, and he asked me to confirm I was alone. I stepped out onto the back porch and closed the door. Anthony said, "The Layla Mansour you know doesn't exist. The real Layla Mansour died in a car accident in Beirut 6 years ago. Someone has been using her identity since then, and I've got flags all over the system. There are connections to at least 3 suspected human trafficking networks operating in the mid-Atlantic region. This isn't just identity theft. This is someone with serious backing and resources. Human trafficking." The words hit me like a physical blow. I thought about all the families in our area with young daughters taking piano lessons from Layla. I thought about the trust we'd placed in her, welcoming her into our home every week, letting her build a relationship with Sophia. Anthony continued, "I'm seeing at least 6 other families in your area who've hired her through the same music academy referral service. All of them have daughters between ages 6 and 9. All of them are in affluent neighborhoods with busy professional parents. This is a hunting operation, and your family isn't the only target." I asked Anthony what I should do, and he said I needed to contact the FBI immediately. This was beyond local police jurisdiction. Trafficking networks operated across state lines and required federal resources to investigate. He gave me the direct number for the FBI field office in Fairfax and told me to ask for the Organized Crime Division. Then he said something that made my blood run colder. "The fact that she's moving this fast on your family suggests something changed. Usually these operations take months to set up. If they're going tomorrow night, it means either they've identified your daughter as a particularly valuable target or they're worried their window is closing." I called the FBI field office and was transferred 3 times before reaching an agent named Victoria Corey, who specialized in organized crime and human trafficking. I explained everything as clearly as possible. The overheard conversation in Arabic, the fake identity, Anthony's findings about the trafficking network connections. Agent Curie listened without interrupting, then asked me to send her the security camera footage and everything Anthony had sent me. Her voice was calm but urgent. She said she'd have agents at my house within 90 minutes, and that I should act completely normal until they arrived. Most importantly, I shouldn't confront Layla or change any of our plans. Normal. I had to pretend everything was fine while knowing that someone had infiltrated our lives with the intention of destroying them. I started dinner, a simple pasta dish that required minimal attention because my hands were shaking too badly to handle anything complicated. Sophia came downstairs and set the table, chattering about the movie she wanted to see tomorrow night. I made appropriate responses while my mind raced through scenarios. What if the FBI couldn't stop it? What if there were other people involved that we didn't know about? What if acting normal meant putting Sophia in even more danger? Rachel came home at 6:30, earlier than expected, and immediately noticed something was wrong. I gave her a look that said we needed to talk in private, and she understood instantly. We put Sophia in front of a movie in the living room, then went into our bedroom and closed the door. I told her everything. The conversation I'd overheard, the fake identity, the trafficking network, the FBI agents who'd be arriving soon. Rachel's face went from confusion to horror to fury in the space of 30 seconds. She wanted to grab Sophia and run, get in the car and drive somewhere, anywhere. I grabbed her hands and explained that running would alert the network, that they'd disappear and potentially target other families, that the FBI needed us to stay calm and cooperate. Rachel asked why I'd never mentioned that I spoke Arabic, and I gave her the shortest version possible of my time in Iraq and Syria. She stared at me like I was a stranger, and maybe in that moment I was. The husband she'd known for 10 years had kept this entire piece of his history hidden, but we didn't have time to process that revelation because the doorbell rang, and I knew the FBI had arrived. 2 agents came to the door, Agent Curie and her partner, Agent Dennis Okafor. They'd parked a block away and approached on foot to avoid alerting any surveillance that might be monitoring our house. We sat at the dining room table while Sophia watched her movie, oblivious to the crisis unfolding 20 feet away. Agent Curie asked me to walk through everything again, this time recording my statement on a digital device. She asked detailed questions about Layla's behavior, her questions about our family, the exact wording of the phone conversation I'd overheard. Agent Okafor pulled out a tablet and showed me surveillance photos of 3 men. He asked if I'd ever seen any of them near our house or neighborhood. I studied each face carefully. 2 were Middle Eastern, 1 was Eastern European. I didn't recognize any of them. Agent Okafor said they were known associates of trafficking networks operating in Virginia, Maryland, and D.C. The FBI had been tracking them for 18 months but hadn't been able to connect them to specific crimes until now. My testimony about the overheard phone conversation gave them the probable cause they needed to move forward. Agent Curie explained their plan. They needed to set up surveillance on our house immediately and arrange for undercover agents to be present during tomorrow's scheduled events. If the network was planning to move tomorrow night, the FBI wanted to catch them in the act, with overwhelming evidence that would stand up in court. That meant Rachel and I needed to proceed with our plans exactly as Layla expected. Drop Sophia at Rachel's mother's house, go to the movie, maintain our normal routine. FBI agents would be watching the house and ready to intervene the moment any attempt was made. Rachel objected immediately, her voice rising despite our attempts to stay quiet. She said there was no way she'd use our daughter as bait, that the FBI was insane if they thought she'd leave Sophia vulnerable even with protection. Agent Curie held up her hand and explained that Sophia wouldn't actually be at the grandmother's house. They'd substitute an undercover agent who matched Sophia's general appearance and age, similar height, hair color, build. The real Sophia would be at a secure FBI facility with child protection specialists. Rachel's mother would be briefed and relocated as well, so no one would actually be in danger. I asked what would happen to Layla. Agent Curie's expression hardened. She said they'd arrest her simultaneously when they moved on the operational team, preventing her from warning her associates or fleeing. They already had enough evidence for identity fraud charges based on Anthony's findings, and my testimony about the overheard conversation added conspiracy to commit kidnapping. Additional charges would follow once they'd documented the full scope of the network. She expected Layla would cooperate in exchange for a reduced sentence, providing information about her handlers and other scouts in the network. The plan required split-second timing. Agent Okafor began installing additional surveillance equipment throughout our house, pinhole cameras in the living room and hallway, audio recording devices disguised as smoke detectors, GPS trackers in our vehicles. He worked quickly and efficiently while Agent Curie briefed us on exactly how tomorrow would unfold. We'd receive a text at noon with the final go-ahead. We'd drop Sophia at the grandmother's house at exactly 5:30 as planned. The substitute would already be inside, positioned out of sight. We'd complete the handoff in the driveway, brief and normal, then drive away. Agent Corey showed us photos of the substitute, a female FBI agent named Allison, who specialized in undercover work involving children. She was 24, but looked much younger, with the same brown hair and slight build as Sophia. In the photos, wearing similar clothes to what Sophia typically wore, the resemblance was close enough to fool someone watching from a distance or seeing her briefly in low light. The operational team wouldn't know they'd grabbed the wrong target until they were already in custody. Rachel asked, what would happen to Sophia during all of this? Agent Corey explained that child specialists would be with her the entire time at the secure facility, keeping her comfortable and entertained. They'd tell her she was helping with an important FBI training exercise, that she was being very brave and helpful. The specialists were trained in trauma-informed care and would ensure Sophia wasn't frightened or traumatized by the experience. We'd be reunited with her within hours of the arrests, and she'd never know how close she'd come to being taken. The agents left at 11, disappearing into the night as quietly as they'd arrived. Rachel and I sat on the couch in the dark living room, holding each other and trying to process everything. She asked me about Iraq, about why I'd never mentioned working for the DIA, about what else I might be hiding. I told her there wasn't time to unpack all of that we needed to focus on getting through tomorrow and keeping Sophia safe. Rachel nodded, but I could see the hurt and confusion in her eyes. The foundation of our marriage had cracked, and I didn't know if we'd be able to repair it. That night, I barely slept. Every sound in the house made me tense, wondering if someone was trying to break in early, if they'd somehow discovered we knew about their plans. I checked the security cameras on my phone every 15 minutes, watching the empty street and quiet yard. Rachel tossed beside me, and twice I heard her crying quietly into her pillow. Around 4 in the morning, I went downstairs and reviewed all the footage I had of Layla, trying to find any other warning signs I'd missed. In one video from 3 months ago, Layla had been looking at family photos on our mantel while Sophia used the bathroom. She'd picked up each frame, studying the faces, paying particular attention to a photo of Rachel's mother. She'd taken a picture of it with her phone. At the time, I'd assumed she was just admiring the photo. Now I realized she was documenting Rachel's mother's appearance, adding it to whatever file they were building on our family. How long had they been planning this? How many other details had I missed? Saturday morning arrived with cruel normalcy. Sophia bounced into our bedroom at 7, asking if she could wear her new dress to Grandma's house tonight. Rachel pulled her into a tight hug that lasted longer than usual, and I saw tears running down Rachel's face. Sophia asked why Mommy was crying, and Rachel said she was just happy, that sometimes grown-ups cry when they're really happy. Sophia accepted this explanation and ran off to pick out her outfit. Children trust so easily. That trust is beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. Agent Corey called at 8 to confirm that everything was proceeding as planned. The substitute agent Allison was in position at a staging location 5 minutes from Rachel's mother's house. The tactical team was ready to deploy. Surveillance units were monitoring Layla's apartment and the known addresses of the 3 suspects from the photos. Everyone was waiting for us to make our move. Agent Corey asked if we were okay, if we could maintain our composure. I said yes, though I wasn't sure it was true. I made pancakes for breakfast while watching Sophia color at the kitchen table. Every moment felt precious and fragile, like I was seeing her for the first time. The way she stuck her tongue out slightly when concentrating, the purple crayon she always used for skies, the gap-toothed smile when she showed me her finished picture. What if something went wrong tonight? What if the FBI's plan failed? What if I was making a terrible mistake by going along with this instead of just taking my family and disappearing? Layla texted Rachel at 10 o'clock, asking if Sophia had been practicing the Chopin piece. Rachel's hands shook as she typed back a cheerful response about how Sophia had practiced that morning and was excited about her lesson next Friday. Layla replied with a smiley emoji and a comment about how talented Sophia was becoming. The casual friendliness of the exchange made me want to drive to Layla's apartment and confront her myself, but I forced myself to stay calm, to trust that the FBI knew what they were doing. The day dragged by with excruciating slowness. Every hour felt like 3. We took Sophia to the park, pushing her on the swings and watching her play with other children, all the while knowing that this might be one of our last normal moments together. Rachel held my hand so tightly, her nails dug into my palm. At 3 o'clock, Agent Curie sent the final confirmation text. Everything was ready. We just had to execute our part of the plan. At 4:30, we started getting Sophia ready. She changed into her new dress and packed her overnight bag with her favorite stuffed rabbit and the book she was reading. She was excited about staying with Grandma, about the special pasta dish they'd planned. I helped her zip up her bag while fighting back tears. Rachel stood in the doorway watching us, her face pale and drawn. We were about to hand our daughter over to strangers, trusting that they'd protect her while using her as bait to catch monsters. We loaded into the car at 5:15. The drive to Rachel's mother's house took 20 minutes, and I used the time to memorize every detail of my daughter's face, the way her hair fell across her forehead, the excited sparkle in her eyes as she talked about the pasta Grandma was making, the small scar on her chin from when she'd fallen off her bike last summer. Rachel sat in the passenger seat crying silently, looking out the window so Sophia wouldn't see her face. We pulled into the driveway of Rachel's mother's house at exactly 5:35. The neighborhood looked completely normal. Kids playing basketball in driveways, someone mowing their lawn, a dog barking in a backyard. Nothing to suggest FBI agents were positioned in 3 different locations with eyes on every approach. We walked Sophia to the door, and Rachel's mother opened it with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. She'd been briefed on the plan, knew what was about to happen. Rachel hugged Sophia tightly, whispering something in her ear that I couldn't hear. Then I hugged her, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo, feeling the solid reality of her small body against mine. She felt so fragile, so easy to break. I wanted to grab her and run, to forget about the FBI and their plan and just disappear with my family. But I released her and watched her skip inside the house, excited about her evening with Grandma. The door closed, and we walked back to our car like we'd done dozens of times before. Except this time, our daughter wasn't actually in that house. Somewhere inside, out of sight from the windows, FBI agents were completing the switch. The real Sophia was being quickly and quietly moved to an unmarked vehicle parked in the garage. Agent Allison was taking her place, settling into the role of a 7-year-old girl spending the evening with her grandmother. And Rachel's mother was probably in the kitchen, preparing pasta for a child who wasn't really her granddaughter, following a script the FBI had given her. We drove away, and I watched the house disappear in the rearview mirror. Agent Curie had insisted we actually go to the movie theater downtown, maintaining the illusion of normalcy in case anyone was tracking our phones or watching our credit card transactions. We bought tickets to an action thriller that had just opened, sat in the dark theater with popcorn neither of us could eat, and waited for news. Agent Curie had promised to call the moment anything happened. The movie played on the screen, explosions and car chases that felt absurd compared to the real danger happening somewhere across the city. 30 minutes into the movie, my phone vibrated. I answered immediately, not caring about the other moviegoers who glared at me. Agent Curie's voice was tight with adrenaline. "We have a vehicle approaching the residence. White cargo van, no plates. 2 subjects visible in the front seats. They're parking 3 houses down. Tactical team is standing by," I told Rachel, and we both stood up, leaving the theater and rushing to our car. Agent Curie said we needed to stay away from the scene, that it was an active law enforcement operation, but I was already driving toward Rachel's mother's neighborhood. Agent Curie stayed on the line, narrating what was happening. Subjects are exiting the vehicle, both male, dark clothing, carrying what appears to be a large duffel bag. They're approaching through the back alley, avoiding street visibility. Very professional movement. They've done this before. My hands gripped the steering wheel so hard, my knuckles went white. Rachel was crying openly now, asking why this was taking so long. Why weren't the agents moving in? "They're at the back door now," Agent Curie continued. "One subject is working on the lock. Advanced entry techniques, definitely trained. They're inside the house. Tactical team is moving into position. We're giving them 30 seconds to fully commit to the crime. 30 seconds. Half a minute for armed men to be inside a house where they thought my daughter was sleeping. I knew Agent Allison was trained and protected, knew that FBI agents were positioned throughout the house, but the fear was overwhelming. Then Agent Curie's voice changed, becoming sharper and more commanding. "Go, go, go, all units execute." I could hear shouting through the phone, commands being yelled, the sounds of rapid movement. Agent Curie said, "Subjects are in custody. 2 males apprehended inside the residence. 0 shots fired. Stand by." The line went quiet for a moment, and Rachel grabbed my arm hard enough to bruise. Then Agent Curie came back. "We have a 3rd subject in the vehicle attempting to flee. Pursuit units are in contact." I was driving too fast now, weaving through traffic while Rachel braced herself against the dashboard. Agent Curie stayed on the line, updating us in real time. "Pursuit vehicle has the suspect blocked. Subject is attempting to flee on foot. Officers in pursuit, stand by." More sounds of shouting, this time more distant. Then, 3rd subject in custody. All 3 suspects are detained. Situation is secure. I repeat, situation is secure. Agent Allison is unharmed. Your daughter's grandmother is unharmed. The operation was successful. I pulled over on the side of the road, unable to drive safely anymore. Rachel was sobbing, her whole body shaking. Agent Curie said we could come to the scene now, that they'd have someone meet us and escort us in. She gave me an address 3 blocks from Rachel's mother's actual house. a staging area where they were processing the arrests. I started driving again, following the GPS while my own body began to shake with delayed reaction. We'd done it. The nightmare was over. Or at least, this part of it was. The staging area was a church parking lot full of FBI vehicles and police cars, their lights flashing in the gathering dusk. Agent Okafor met us at the perimeter and walked us through to where Agent Corey was coordinating the scene. She looked exhausted but satisfied. Your testimony led to the arrest of 3 suspects involved in a human trafficking operation that spans at least 7 states. The 2 who entered the house had restraints, sedatives, and forged documentation, suggesting they were planning to move your daughter out of the country within 48 hours. Rachel made a sound like she'd been punched. Agent Corey continued, "The 3rd suspect, the driver, is already cooperating. He's identified 2 more members of the network, including a logistics coordinator who arranges transportation and false documents. We're executing search warrants on 6 properties right now, and we arrested Layla Mansour at her apartment 30 minutes ago. She was preparing to leave the country. Fake passport, packed bags, substantial cash. She's in federal custody and is facing multiple charges. I asked about Sophia, where she was, when we could see her. Agent Curie smiled for the first time since we'd met her. She's at the field office with 2 of our child specialists. She thinks she participated in a training exercise and is very proud of herself for being so brave. She doesn't know what really happened. We kept her completely insulated from the operation. You can see her in about 20 minutes. We just need to debrief you first on next steps and what information you'll need to provide for the prosecution." The debrief took 45 minutes. Agent Corey and Agent Okafor walked us through what they'd found at the scene. The cargo van equipped with restraints bolted to the floor, syringes of sedatives, a laptop with encrypted files containing photos and information on at least 30 children, including Sophia. The 2 men arrested inside the house were both foreign nationals with expired visas. They'd been operating in the U.S. for over a year, working for a network that recruited children for wealthy clients overseas. The 3rd suspect, the driver, was American, but had extensive connections to international trafficking networks. He'd provided some information already, trying to negotiate a deal, but the FBI expected Layla to be the most valuable source. As the scout who'd identified and researched the targets, she had the most complete picture of the network's structure and methods. Agent Curie said Layla's initial statements revealed at least 15 other scouts operating in similar ways: music teachers, tutors, youth coaches, all of them building trust with families while cataloging children for potential abduction. We drove to the FBI field office and were escorted to a comfortable room that looked more like a living room than an interrogation space. Sophia was sitting on a couch playing a board game with 2 women in casual clothes. When she saw us, she jumped up and ran over, excited to tell us about the training exercise she'd helped with. She said the FBI agents had been really nice and had let her help them practice their procedures. She thought the whole thing had been fun, like being in a spy movie. The specialists had done their job perfectly. My daughter had no idea she'd been in danger. We thanked the specialists with tears running down our faces and took Sophia home. She fell asleep in the car, exhausted from the excitement of her adventure. Rachel and I didn't speak during the drive. There was too much to say and no energy left to say it. We carried Sophia inside and tucked her into bed, both of us standing in her doorway watching her sleep, unable to leave, needing to see the rise and fall of her breathing to believe she was really safe. The full investigation unfolded over the next 3 weeks. Agent Corey called me every few days with updates. The laptop from the cargo van contained evidence of a sophisticated trafficking operation that had been active for at least 3 years. 32 children had been identified as targets, and the FBI was working with local authorities to alert and protect each family. 8 children had actually been taken, all of them recovered in coordinated raids across 5 states. The operation was international, with connections to trafficking networks in Eastern Europe and the Middle East. Layla, whose real name was Rania Aboud, had been working as a scout for the network since arriving in the United States 4 years ago. She'd used the identity of the dead Layla Mansour to build credibility in music communities, leveraging her genuine piano skills to gain access to families with young daughters. She'd identified at least 20 potential targets over 2 years, providing detailed intelligence files to the operational teams. The network had paid her $10,000 per successful abduction, plus a monthly retainer for her scouting work. Rania cooperated extensively once arrested, hoping for a reduced sentence. She revealed the structure of the organization, named 17 people involved at various levels, provided access to encrypted communication channels. She admitted she'd been recruited while working at a music school in Beirut, that she'd been desperate for money to support her family after her father's medical expenses bankrupted them. She'd told herself she was just providing information, that what happened after wasn't her responsibility. But federal prosecutors made clear she was a critical component of a conspiracy that had destroyed lives. The 3 men arrested at Rachel's mother's house received sentences ranging from 35 to 45 years in federal prison. The network's leadership, identified through Rania's cooperation and the encrypted files, was arrested in coordinated raids across the Mid-Atlantic region. 12 people total, facing charges that ranged from conspiracy to kidnapping to human trafficking. The FBI's press conference called it one of the most significant trafficking busts in the region's history. They didn't use our names or show our faces, but Agent Khoury credited a vigilant parent with breaking the case open. Rania received 25 years in federal prison as part of her plea deal. The judge made clear that her cooperation had been valuable, but couldn't erase her role in targeting children, including my daughter. During her sentencing hearing, I was allowed to provide a victim impact statement. I stood in front of the courtroom and described listening to Rania discuss my daughter like she was merchandise, hearing her provide our security code and schedule with cold efficiency, watching my child hug her goodbye, not knowing this woman had marked her for abduction. Rania cried during my statement, but I felt nothing watching her tears. The other families whose children had been targeted reached out to us through the FBI's Victim Services Coordinator. Some of them wanted to meet, to share their experiences and support each other through the trauma. We attended one support group meeting, but Rachel found it too overwhelming. Hearing other parents describe their near misses and their guilt over trusting the wrong person, we decided to process our experience privately with the help of a therapist who specialized in family trauma. Sophia continued piano lessons with a new teacher, a 68-year-old woman named Dorothy Brennan who'd taught at the local university for 40 years. We visited Dorothy's home for lessons rather than having her come to ours. I couldn't bear the thought of another teacher in our piano room. We ran extensive background checks, checked references from dozens of families, attended the first 6 months of lessons ourselves. Dorothy was patient with our paranoia, understanding without asking for details why we might be hypervigilant. The house felt different after everything that happened. Rachel and I walked through rooms, seeing them differently. This was where Rania had positioned herself to observe the alarm panel. This was the hallway where she'd made that phone call. This was the piano bench where she'd sat while planning to destroy us. We upgraded our security system, installed cameras in every room, changed our routines to be less predictable. But we couldn't change the memories, couldn't unsee what we now knew had been happening in our home for 8 months. Rachel and I went to couples therapy to address the fractures in our marriage. She was hurt that I'd never mentioned my time working for the DIA, that I'd hidden such a significant part of my past. I tried to explain that I'd wanted to leave that life behind, that civilian work had been my attempt to build something normal, after years of seeing the worst of humanity. The therapist helped us understand that we'd both been keeping parts of ourselves hidden. Rachel had been struggling with the demands of her nursing job, but hadn't wanted to burden me. I'd been carrying the weight of experiences I couldn't talk about. The crisis had forced us to be honest with each other in ways we should have been years ago. 6 months after the arrests, we made the decision to move. The memories were too heavy in that house, the knowledge of what had almost happened too overwhelming. Rachel took a position at a hospital in a different part of the state, and we bought a home in a neighborhood where no one knew our story. Starting over felt both liberating and cowardly. We were running from something that would follow us no matter where we went. But the new house had no piano room for ghosts to haunt, no heating vents carrying sinister conversations, no history of betrayal. Sophia adjusted to the move better than we expected. She was excited about her new school, her new room, her new friends. She asked why we'd moved, and we told her Dad's job had changed, and we wanted a new adventure. She accepted this explanation without question, the way children do when their parents present change as natural and positive. Dorothy agreed to continue teaching Sophia via video calls once a week, and Sophia practiced diligently, her talent continuing to develop. A year after the night I'd overheard that phone call, Sophia performed in a recital at Dorothy's music school. She played a Chopin nocturne with such feeling and technical precision that several people in the audience wiped away tears. After the performance, Dorothy told us that Sophia had a rare gift, that she should consider applying to specialized music programs when she got older. I watched my daughter take her bow, beaming with pride and joy, and felt grateful for every moment we almost lost. Agent Khoury stayed in touch, calling every few months with updates on related cases. The intelligence gathered from Rania and the others had led to additional prosecutions, not just of the trafficking network, but of the clients who'd commissioned the abductions. Wealthy men in 3 countries were arrested and charged with various crimes related to exploitation of children. The ripple effects of that one phone call I'd overheard extended far beyond our family, disrupting an entire ecosystem of predation. I started doing consulting work for the FBI, using my Arabic language skills to help with other trafficking investigations. Agent Khoury would send me encrypted files, phone recordings, text messages, social media posts, asking for translation and cultural context. The work was grim, often keeping me awake at night with the knowledge of what people were capable of doing to children. But every case I helped with was another family potentially saved, another child who might avoid the fate my daughter had nearly met. Rachel struggled more than I did with moving forward. She had nightmares about variations of what might have happened. Sophia being taken while we sat in a movie theater, the operational team arriving too late, the FBI's plan failing catastrophically. Our therapist said it was normal for trauma to manifest as intrusive thoughts about alternative outcomes, that Rachel's brain was trying to process the danger by imagining all the ways it could have gone wrong. The nightmares gradually decreased in frequency, but they never fully stopped. We attended Rania's parole hearing 23 years later, determined to ensure she served her full sentence. She was 58 now, gray-haired and defeated-looking, claiming she'd found redemption through prison education programs and religious study. She'd written us a letter of apology that her lawyer presented to the parole board, full of platitudes about remorse and growth. I testified about the permanent impact of her actions on our family, about the way my daughter still didn't know how close she'd come to being stolen. The parole board denied her petition unanimously. Sophia grew into a remarkable young woman, eventually attending Juilliard on a full scholarship. She never pursued the truth about why we'd moved when she was 7, never questioned the gaps in our explanations about that period. Maybe some part of her sensed that certain questions were better left unasked. She knew only that she loved music, that playing piano brought her joy and meaning, that her talent was something precious to be cultivated and shared. On the 25th anniversary of that March Friday when I'd overheard Layla's phone call, I received a package from Agent Khoury. Inside was a letter explaining that the investigation I'd helped initiate had ultimately led to the rescue of 63 children and the prosecution of 78 individuals across 12 countries. The network we'd disrupted had been operating for over a decade, and breaking it apart had required years of patient police work building on the intelligence we'd provided. Agent Khoury thanked me for having the courage to report what I'd heard, for trusting the system to protect my family, for continuing to help with other cases over the years. Also in the package was a photo taken from the FBI's surveillance during the operation. It showed Rachel and me dropping Sophia at her grandmother's house that Saturday evening, frozen in the moment before we knew whether the plan would work. We looked terrified and determined in equal measure, holding our daughter's hands, preparing to walk away from her while trusting strangers to keep her safe. I'd never seen the photo before, hadn't known anyone had captured that moment. Agent Khoury had written on the back, "The hardest thing a parent can do is trust others to protect their child. You made the right choice." I keep that photo in my desk drawer now, next to the letter Agent Khoury sent. Sometimes when I'm working on a translation for a new case, when the details are particularly dark, and I wonder whether any of this work matters, I pull out the photo and study our faces. We were ordinary parents facing an extraordinary crisis, making impossible decisions with incomplete information. We could have run, could have confronted Layla immediately, could have made a dozen different choices, but we trusted the FBI, played our role in their plan, and because of that, 63 children went home safe. Sophia calls every Sunday evening to tell us about her week, performances, rehearsals, the students she's started teaching herself. She's brilliant and kind and completely unaware that her existence as a free, thriving person represents a victory over forces that wanted to reduce her to merchandise. She doesn't know about the network that targeted her, doesn't know her piano teacher was a predator, doesn't know that her father spent 6 years in war zones learning the language that ultimately saved her. And maybe that's how it should be. Some burdens are meant to be carried by parents so their children can walk through the world unweighted. I still speak Arabic using it now not to coordinate military logistics, but to protect the vulnerable. The language that could have gotten my family killed became a tool for preventing other families' nightmares. Agent Khoury sends me cases regularly. I've helped with dozens of investigations, translating hundreds of hours of intercepted communications. Some lead to arrests, some help identify victims, some provide intelligence that gets used in ways I never learn about. The work is invisible and exhausting and absolutely essential. Rachel eventually returned to nursing full-time once Sophia was in college, finding meaning again in caring for others. She says the experience made her more attuned to subtle signs of danger, more willing to trust her instincts when something feels wrong. She's filed 3 reports with Child Protective Services over the years, situations where she suspected a patient was being abused or neglected, where her training and intuition told her to speak up even without concrete proof. She'd rather be wrong and face embarrassment than stay silent and let a child suffer. The last time I saw Layla, Rania, was at that parole hearing. She's eligible again in 2 years, and will attend that hearing too, and the one after that, and every hearing until either she dies in prison or we do. Some people deserve second chances. Others deserve to face the consequences of their choices until those consequences have run their course. She chose to target children, chose to trade their lives for money, chose to smile at my daughter while planning her abduction. That choice defines her, and no amount of prison education or claimed redemption will change what she is. On Sophia's 30th birthday, Rachel and I finally told her the truth. She'd been asking more questions about our past, about my time overseas, about why we'd really moved when she was 7. We decided she was old enough to handle the reality. We sat in our living room, and I explained about overhearing the phone call in Arabic, about the trafficking network, about the FBI operation that had used her as unknowing bait. Sophia was quiet for a long time after we finished, processing information that recontextualized her entire childhood. Finally, she asked if we'd been wrong to keep it from her all these years. Rachel and I had discussed this question many times, never reaching a satisfactory answer. I told Sophia that we'd made the choice we thought was right, that we'd wanted her to grow up without fear, without the burden of knowing she'd been hunted. Maybe we were wrong. Maybe she deserved to know earlier, but we'd done what we thought would protect her, just like we'd done everything else, imperfectly, with love, doing our best in impossible circumstances. Sophia hugged us both and said she understood, that she was grateful we'd kept her safe, that she didn't blame us for any of it. Then she asked if she could see the photo from that night, the one showing us dropping her at her grandmother's house. I retrieved it from my desk, and she studied it carefully, seeing her parents' faces marked by terror and determination. She said we looked brave, and I told her we'd been terrified, that bravery was just being terrified and doing what needed to be done anyway. Now, when I hear Arabic being spoken, in restaurants, on the street, in airports, I pay attention, not with paranoia, but with awareness that language is power and knowledge is protection. I've spent years translating the words of people who thought no one was listening, people who assumed their conversations were private, people who underestimated the power of someone understanding what they thought was secret. And I've learned that sometimes the most important thing you can do is listen carefully when people think you can't understand them. The work continues because the threat continues. Agent Khoury retired last year, but her replacement, a young agent named David Patel, sends me cases with the same regularity. The networks evolve, finding new methods and new covers, but the essential predation remains constant. There are always people willing to exploit the vulnerable, always families who trust too easily, always children who deserve protection they don't know they need. And there are people like me, using whatever skills we have to stand between predators and prey. My daughter plays piano at Carnegie Hall now, performing for thousands who don't know her music almost didn't exist. 25 years ago, someone planned to take her, to sell her, to destroy her future. They failed because I understood Arabic, because the FBI moved quickly, because we made hard choices and trusted the right people. Every note she plays is a victory over that network, proof that predators don't always win, that sometimes the good guys catch the monsters before they can destroy another life. And that's worth remembering whether you're listening to music or languages or the quiet conversations people think no one else understands. Thanks for watching till the end. Make sure to subscribe and like to not miss the next story.